These real haunted objects are so evil that Ed and Lorraine Warren lock them away to protect people from being cursed or harmed by them. The Raggedy Ann doll that turned into Annabelle. It started with a young nurse finding an innocent gift from her mother sitting in her apartment, a vintage Raggedy Ann doll. But within weeks, that doll went from cute to horrifying. It moved on its own, it shifted positions, it left handwritten notes on parchment paper, except nobody in the apartment owned parchment paper. But the most chilling moment came when the doll was found standing upright, leaning menacingly against a chair, with what looked like drops of red liquid smeared across its fabric hands and chest. That doll became infamous as Annabelle. Now, the Warrens, after investigating, believed it wasn't just haunted, it was a conduit for something demonic. They said a malevolent, inhuman spirit was using the doll as a disguise to get closer to people. During one encounter, a friend of the doll's owner mocked it, daring it to do its worst. That night, he reportedly dreamed of the doll crawling onto his chest and basically getting a hold of his neck. Now, hours later, he actually passed away in a violent motorcycle accident. The Warrens didn't waste any time. They brought Annabelle back to their museum in Monroe, Connecticut, but even there, she remained active. Visitors who taunted her inside the glass case often met with sudden accidents afterwards. Now, one man banged on the glass and laughed at the warnings posted. On his way home, he lost control of his motorcycle and passed away instantly. His girlfriend survived, but she later swore he had been laughing about Annabelle seconds before the crash. Even Ed and Lorraine admitted Annabelle was one of the most dangerous objects they had ever kept. The doll is locked behind glass, surrounded by protective prayers, with a bold warning label that says positively do not open. The cursed wedding dress of Anna Baker. Imagine being so heartbroken in life that your spirit clings to a wedding dress for eternity. That's exactly what happened with Anna Baker in the 1800s, and her gown is still said to be haunted to this day. Anna came from a very wealthy Pennsylvania family. She fell in love with a steel worker and planned to marry him, even buying a lavish white wedding gown for the big day, but her father, Elias Baker, forbid the marriage. Now, Anna was forced to live out her single and bitter life, and she passed away never wearing her dream dress. But here's where the horror begins. The dress that's now displayed at the Baker Mansion Museum in Altoona seems alive. Visitors have sworn the dress moves inside its sealed glass case. Sometimes late at night, it is seen swaying gently as if being twirled by a bride who never got her wedding dance. Other times, it thrashes violently, almost as though an unseen force is raging against the injustice of Anna's stolen love. Local reports say that in the 1970s, security guards at the museum refused to do overnight shifts in the room with the dress. One even quit on the spot, claiming he heard sobbing and banging from the case in the middle of the night. Others said they saw a very shadowy woman figure, reflected in the glass, staring back at them with hollow eyes. The Warrens, though never the original keepers of the gown, investigated it as part of their haunted objects cases. They claimed the energy surrounding the dress wasn't residual, it was interactive. Lorraine Warren once described it as a restless spirit refusing to let go of earthly pain. Next, we have the Busby stoop chair. The Busby stoop chair is a notorious object that is said to be haunted by the ghost of Thomas Busby, an executioner who was crucified in 1702. According to legend, anyone who sits in the chair will be cursed with bad luck and eventually meet a very tragic end. After many generations of victims falling, to fatal accidents, the cursed chair would be sold to the Thirsk Museum, where it would ultimately become an attraction, suspended from the wall to the ceiling currently to prevent any visitors from sitting on it and activating its curse. However, in 2018, a team of scientists from the University of Leeds conducted a thorough analysis of the chair, including, the structure, the history behind it, and all the kind of past curses that were said to be about it. Now, their findings did reveal that the chair is not in fact haunted, but rather its strange reputation can be attributed to a combination of folklore and psychological manipulation. The scientists concluded that the chair's supposed curse is likely the result of a combination of suggestion, expectation, the power of storytelling as well. But as Dr. Richard Wiseman, a psychologist from the University of Hertfordshire, noted, the Busby stoop chair is a classic example of how our perceptions could be influenced by our beliefs and expectations. However, fans, of course, do beg to differ and still believe it's not only haunted, but really cursed. Next, we have the Dibbuk box. Now, the Dibbuk box is a notorious object that is said to be haunted by a malevolent spirit known as a Dibbuk. Now, according to legend, the box was originally owned by a survivor who used it to contain the evil spirit. Essentially, the box is claimed to contain a trapped Dibbuk, causing misfortune to anyone who opens it or comes in close proximity with it. The term Dibbuk actually comes from Jewish folklore, where it represents a wandering spirit that can possess a living person to achieve its goals. Now, people who have allegedly owned the Dibbuk box report experiencing various negative events like sudden illness, extreme bad luck, feelings of anxiety, and even physical manifestations. The Dibbuk box gained widespread notoriety due to, paranormal investigators like Zach Bagans featuring it on their shows, and it even inspired horror films like The Possession. Last on my list for today is Robert the Doll. Robert the Doll is a haunted doll that is on display at the East Martello Museum in Key West, Florida. The doll is said to be the most haunted doll in the world, so beating out our girl Annabelle. Now, some key points about the doll is that, a young girl gave a life-size doll to Robert Eugene, who went by Otto, in 1904. Otto named the doll Robert after himself, and Otto built a room in his attic for the doll with furniture and toys. Otto became attached to the doll and blamed it for his mishaps. Now, legend has it that the doll is cursed, and visitors who don't follow the doll's rules will be cursed as well. According to sources, some visitors have experienced sudden illness, injury, accidents, and even fatality after just visiting the doll. Visitors apparently write to Robert, often apologizing for not respecting him, out of fear of course, meeting a fateful end. Robert is now technically 117 years old, very old, and lives at the museum in a new display case, which was recently donated by someone who is a fan of Robert's. So if you find yourself in Key West, give it a visit and report back. Next up, the Hope Diamond. The Hope Diamond is one of the most famous diamonds in the world, with a history dating back to the 17th century. The diamond was actually discovered in India in 1673, and it was stolen during the French Revolution. The diamond was originally part of a Hindu statue's eye. The Hope Diamond, a stone as alluring as it is mysterious, is a major draw for all who go to see it. Its discovery brought about terrible fates, though, for seemingly everyone who came into contact with it, leading many to believe that the gem was cursed. And because of this, for centuries, it was believed to be so, with many of its owners meeting very tragic ends. The man who found the Hope Diamond, Jean-Baptiste Tavernier, was said to be torn apart by wild dogs after stealing the diamond from the Hindu statue. Now, by 1908, the Washington Post was claiming that the Hope Diamond has brought trouble to all who have owned it, and followed up with several similar articles, heightening the bizarre and morbid stories attached to the precious jewel. Now, in 1911, the New York Times printed a very fascinating and completely unsubstantiated list of the fates of the stone's, previous owners, which makes it a very unsettling read. However, in 2010, a team of scientists from the Smithsonian Institution conducted an analysis of the diamond, including, the structure, the history, all of that jazz. Now, their findings revealed that the Hope Diamond is not cursed, but rather its owners have been victims of circumstance and bad luck. Questionable. I'm wondering how they concluded that. Like, how do you get proof that something isn't cursed, right? Anyway, the diamond's history is marked by a series of just unfortunate events, including thefts and betrayal, which have contributed to its reputation as a cursed object. As Dr. Jeffrey Post, curator of the Smithsonian's National Gem and Mineral Collection, noted, the Hope Diamond is a remarkable object, but its history is more a reflection of human nature than any supernatural force. The large diamond actually weighs about 45.52 carats. That is after undergoing a few cuts. Its original weight was marked at 112 carats. This weight is substantial, especially when you consider that this diamond isn't a traditional colorless diamond, but it has a deep blue color, though no one is actually certain of its exact location. The large diamond faced its first cut in 1168 when it was purchased by King Louis XIV of France and crafted into one of his crown jewels. It worked its way down through the family until Louis XV and his wife Marie Antoinette had it. When the couple were beheaded in the French Revolution and the royal treasure, pilfered, the Hope Diamond was lost, and its cursed reputation then took root. The general public can view the Hope Diamond in the Harry Winston Room in the Hall of Geology, Gems, and Minerals of the Natural History Museum of the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. That was a mouthful, so if you're ever in Washington and want to catch a glimpse, go for it.
Number 3. The Museum of Death. Well, that's a cheery name, isn't it? You have to imagine with a name like the Museum of Death, there's something suspicious going on. Nope, not particularly. It's owned by a very cheery couple who built it in 1995 in the city's first mortuary. Their intended mission is to make people happy to be alive, which actually is very terrifying and ominous in a sort of Jigsaw, cherish your life sort of way. It's intended as a commemoration of life, just with a heavy focus on the last stage of life. It serves as a grim look at death, although the owners insist they don't want to scare anyone, but they're not trying to sanitize death either. Instead, they choose to show the reality of it, all the grisly details and all. As such, the museum is a site of controversy for quite some time, as some people find the exhibits a bit extreme. Some people go so far as to say it's tasteless, with footage of autopsies being shown and a collection of all sorts of relics from some of the evilest of evil criminals, Jeffrey Dahmer to name one. The museum boasts an impressive collection of bones, skulls, coffins, ancient morticians' tools and execution equipment, and all manner of macabre curios guaranteed to leave you feeling uneasy. Now, it should be noted, the museum is absolutely not at all for those with a squeamish stomach, and really should be reserved for those with a real dark interest in the dead. Number 5. The Traveling Museum of the Paranormal and the Occult. Owned by a couple, Dana and Greg Newkirk, who realized one day that they had a passion for the paranormal and a collection worth boasting about, they opened a museum with the intention of getting people to experience the paranormal as close as they could. The thinking being that we don't usually get to experience it up close, this museum provides a one-of-a-kind horror experience. Some of the gems of the collection include a piece of the real-life Amityville horror house, the infamous haunting, or how about the Catskills crone, a terrifying hand-carved idol of a human with nails jammed into the eyes, allegedly tied to a supernatural entity called the crone. The Restless painting, a cursed painting notorious for flinging itself across rooms, or if that's all not enough for you, perhaps the terrifying begging bowl, an ancient Tibetan offering made out of a human skull, designed for rituals where the offerer would feed the skull wine, bread, and blood in exchange to temper the raging spirits of demons for good fortune. Now, there's no question the Traveling Museum is one of the most unique collections on the planet, and lucky for you, it's always moving. But if you're looking for good scares, you don't need to travel anywhere, because you already know the best scares are coming to you twice a day, every day at Top 5 Scary. Stay subscribed and stay scared. Number 4. Zaffis Museum of the Paranormal. Now, for most of us, we probably wouldn't think of mixing cursed items in with the decor. I wouldn't want to bring that dark energy home with me. I get enough bad vibes as it is. Well, for John Zaffis, he welcomes it with open arms. What kind of person would want to do that? Well, if I told you that Zaffis was the nephew of Ed and Lorraine Warren, would it make a bit more sense? Feeling inspired by his aunt and uncle, Zaffis too became a collector of the paranormal and an investigator of the unknown. Must run in the family. He worked alongside his aunt and uncle on several of their cases where he was tutored by them in the ways of the paranormal, leading him to become a respected hunter in his own right. Following in their footsteps, he opened his own museum of his own demonic relics. His collection includes souvenirs from the cases he's worked on in the past, much like his relatives. Some highlights of the collection include a black cast iron human skull that was discovered inside an unnamed political family's house, a black idol that was used for satanic rituals, a sword that was apparently used to conjure black magic, and a whole lot more. Now don't worry, everything Zaffis taken in is safe, it's been cleansed, and he's very careful with his vetting process. Apparently anything too cursed for him to feel safe bringing into the museum, he throws into a body of water. So just be careful swimming around the museum, I suppose. Now, the museum is currently closed, but Zaffis is searching for a new location to open up again soon. Hopefully somewhere with some nice thick walls. Keep all that evil energy in check.
The shadow doll that visits you in your dreams. Now, the shadow doll doesn't just scare you when you look at it, it follows you right into your sleep. This doll, once kept in the Warrens Occult Museum, is considered one of the darkest objects they ever handled. The story goes that this eerie figure was constructed by something deep into black magic rituals. It was pieced together using real human bones and animal parts, including bird claws, and designed to channel pure malevolence. Now, its stitched face and lifeless eyes were meant meant to frighten, but the true terror was its alleged power. People who came in contact with the shadow doll often claimed it entered their dreams. But these weren't just nightmares, they were violent, like really crazy experiences. Victims reported being asphyxiated in their sleep by an invisible force. Some said they woke up with scratches and bruises as if the dream had manifested physically. Now, the Warrens believed the doll was used in rituals to curse enemies, delivering night terrors that could eventually stop someone's heart. Now, what makes this doll especially disturbing is that even a photograph of it is said to hold a lot of power. Lorraine Warren warned that simply gazing too long at the doll's image could invite its presence into your subconscious. Now, this isn't just folklore. I mean, the fear was so widespread that when it was displayed in their museum, it had to be kept inside a locked glass case, bound in protective prayers. One account involved a young man who mocked the idea of the doll. After looking at it closely, he began suffering from night terrors so severe he actually refused to sleep. Days later, he then suffered a heart attack and passed away in his 30s. Doctors couldn't explain it, but the Warrens were convinced the shadow doll had claimed yet another victim. The doll remains one of the few objects that the Warrens said they couldn't neutralize, but only contain. The conjuring mirror that showed something looking back. Now, not all mirrors show your reflection or just your reflection. Some, like the conjuring mirror, show something far darker. This object came into the Warrens' possession after being used in a ritual of catopatromancy, I think I'm saying that right, an ancient form of divination that involves summoning spirits through mirrors. Now, the mirror was reportedly used by occult practitioners who believed they could contact the deceased. Now, instead, they unleashed something terrifying. Witnesses described the mirror as alive, reflecting faces that weren't actually in the room, sometimes with twisted, decayed features. People who stare too long into it often reported losing a sense of time in general, or just standing motionless for hours as if they were hypnotized. Others swore that after looking into the mirror, dark shapes began to appear in their homes, following them into corners, watching silently. One chilling account involved a man who claimed he saw his own corpse staring back at him from the glass. Now, days later, he actually suffered a fatal accident eerily similar to what he had described. Another visitor swore she saw hands pressing out from the inside of the mirror as if something was trapped within it, desperate to escape. The Warrens labeled the conjuring mirror as one of the most cursed items in their collection. They warned that using it was like opening a doorway that you just couldn't shut. Even Ed Warren admitted he refused to stare into it for fear of bringing something back with him. Now, at the museum, the mirror had to be covered in a very heavy cloth whenever not on display. I mean, Lorraine insisted that even brief exposure could infect a person with lingering paranormal energy. To this day, many people refuse to even look at photographs of it. That's how scary it is. The satanic idol unearthed in the Connecticut woods. Now, in 1991, the Warrens discovered one of their most disturbing objects, not in a house, but buried deep in the woods. It was a crude, hand-carved idol shaped like a horned figure standing less than 2 feet tall. Now, the idol was believed to have been used in satanic rituals, and according to the Warrens, it carried a very dangerous aura of evil. Local police had discovered it after reports of strange animal mutilations and cult activity in the Connecticut forest. When the Warrens were called in, they immediately sensed it wasn't just a statue. Ed described the air around it as charged with something oppressive, like the forest itself was basically holding its breath. People who touched the idol often reported sudden sickness, dizziness, or even sometimes violent thoughts. Some became physically aggressive, lashing out for no reason at all. Now, Lorraine claims she saw shadowy figures circling the idol during their investigation, vanishing whenever she tried to focus on them. But the most chilling story comes from a man who accidentally stumbled across the idol before it was taken away. He later described hearing voices whispering his name in the woods, urging him to come a little closer. When he refused, he felt himself shoved violently to the ground, although no one was actually there. Now, afterward, he suffered months of torment. Paranormal activity followed him home, with objects flying off the shelves and dark figures appearing at his bedside. The idol was eventually locked away in the Warrens Occult Museum, sealed under prayer, and never ever allowed to be displayed without strict spiritual protection. Ed and Lorraine believed it was connected to ongoing satanic activity and warned that its purpose was never benign. It was created as a vessel of worship for dark forces. Even now, it remains one of the most mysterious artifacts they ever collected.
We're kicking off today with the Agnes porcelain doll that's been haunting its owners over in Scotland. Yvonne Hydes is an events manager for the Scottish Ghost Company and has organized paranormal investigations across the country. And during one such event at Proven Hall, she received an old-looking doll from one of the members. After taking it home and placing it in her spare room, a number of strange incidents occurred on the property. So we do have some video footage today of the absolute chaos that was happening in Yvonne's house. The bizarre series of paranormal activity culminated in an investigation in a park where Yvonne is adamant she saw the creepy doll blink. She told Glasgow Live one of the members' friends had brought the doll to him after being on holiday in the north of England. They bought it from some charity shop. And she tends to be the recipient of a lot of weird things. Most of the dolls she has in her possession are all hand-me-downs, and they don't bother her. But that night, with that doll, it was making her feel uncomfortable. So she had mentioned her friend David, who works as a medium, absolutely hates this doll. When our lovely witness brought it home, he was like, I'm gonna keep that in the garage. And that made her a little worried. Suddenly, the Cocker Spaniel in the house took a dislike to the doll being in the room. Started barking and shaking. And if you know, animals tend to be the most susceptible to weird spirits. One day our witness came downstairs and saw one of her really heavy lamps sitting in the middle of the living room. Her son came in and was like, hey, are we moving stuff around? Nope. More objects were being moved around each morning and weird electrical things started to happen. Turns out they have like an electrical vacuum that is programmed to come out at 10:30 each night. Well, she was turning off the lights one morning and it like went out and did its own thing. So she looked on the website and it hadn't been registered as being active at the time. So when David took his turn bringing the doll home throughout the night, he also reported knocking and footsteps that just didn't make sense. So the Scottish Ghost Company took this doll to a park to investigate it. They did a little live stream on TikTok, on Facebook. They tied a red light around the doll's neck with hopes of allowing the spirit to transfigure its face onto the doll. Well, during the process, Yvonne and a few others on the live stream were like, yeah, that doll blinked. So it was then up to the team if they wanted to bury it or keep it. They decided to keep it, so I'm sure I'll do an updated video in like a year and it's gonna be everything awful. A spooked man believes his flat is haunted after he filmed a lot of objects moving by themselves. So this bizarre video, which was captured at the man's home in Fayetteville in North Carolina, shows a number of items that are just throwing themselves off a kitchen counter. So the video was posted on Reddit and a lot of folks were like, okay, maybe there was like a piece of string, you know, maybe we were just like doing some really great magic. And I was also kind of skeptical, but then I saw everything moving. The papers were fluttering and I was gonna be like, okay, fraud with a fan. But then the toaster went flying and I was like, yeah, nope, that's legit. So the unnamed filmmaker who posted the video said that they came home to a couple of things out of place and decided to review the footage. And it scared the hell out of them, which like valid. Apparently they're like, yeah, maybe I was being paranoid, but they could feel something or someone looking at them. And they were seriously considering breaking their lease to move. So I checked the comments on the original Reddit post and the man claimed there was like a couple of things that happened in the bathroom and the living room. Thankfully nothing in the bedroom, primarily just the kitchen. And he's like, yeah, I've lived here close to a year. This started like 2 months ago. Now, granted, as of the time of me telling you this was like 7 years ago and the original post was deleted. So I don't have an update, but I'm hoping the guy did break his lease and got the heck out of there. Ever balance on a chair so stupidly that when it eventually tips, you blame the chair instead of your own stupidity? Well, today we have video of a chair doing a whoopsie without any human involvement. The owners of Cronies, a bar and restaurant in Ventura County in California, already lost their words after a surveillance video from the restaurant shows a bar stool falling over on its own, with nobody around. So for this to happen, it's pretty creepy, said the co-owner Dave Folds. He's like, it's just really weird. We've been here 27 years and nothing like this has ever happened. Now, the owner was like, this is not a Halloween stunt. I'm confused. I don't know what's going on. Customers don't seem to be frightened by the potential haunting. They're like, oh, it's funny. It's interesting. Saying like, I'm okay until it's my chair that moves. Another customer was like, so many people come and go. Maybe this place is haunted. I got a feeling. So according to the co-owner, there's a lot of good spirits there. They were referring to like the photos that cover the walls of the restaurant. There's like customers, there's employees, everybody. But apparently, the co-owner does have an idea of who might be responsible. Apparently, Ralph and Dawn, the first originals of the restaurant, introducing the co-owner to his wife, passed like 20 years prior. And whenever something weird happens, they blame it on them. Which not smart, but okay, good luck. Sean Robinson ended up in possession of a petrifying painting more than 20 years ago after his beloved grandmother passed away. But this isn't something you might want to hold in your home. It had been kept hidden away by his grandmother while she was alive because she didn't like to look at it because it was unnerving. And when you look at it, you'll understand why. Now, he's aware skeptics are like, okay, maybe his grandma just wanted to scare and tease him. But he's like, no, what I was told about the anguished man was the truth. Footage shared on his YouTube channel shows how a door suddenly slammed shut without human intervention, which was kind of the first red flag for Sean that maybe something was wrong. He's like, I've witnessed a lot. Noises are the first thing, and at first he didn't relate them to the painting. But it became obvious that they only started when the painting got brought into the house. Sean used to wake up in the middle of the night and see a figure at the end of his bed. He'd have dreams about the painting. Heck, he had a vivid one where he was being lifted off the bed, alien style. As well as alleging to have seen the figure of a man, just like his grandma used to claim she did, Sean says he heard crying, he heard moaning noises. Once he was even surrounded by thick smoke while the temperature plummeted. All signs of demonic activity. Sean said there was no denying it. It was there, and then it just vanished. And most of the activity seems to happen between 3 and 4 a.m. The witching hour.